Former President Donald Trump has been indicted for a third time, this time in Jack Smith's special investigation into the conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. This is one of the indictments that was expected. Now, Trump's legal team was notified on Tuesday. The former president has been charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States, 2 counts of witness tampering, and the conspiracy against rights. Now, 2 of the counts Trump is facing relates to obstruction of an official proceeding, brought under provisions included in a federal witness tampering statute that has also been used to prosecute some of the Capitol rioters. So I think that's pretty significant there, because that's been used against Capitol rioters pretty successfully. Those counts carry a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Trump also faces conspiracy against rights charge under a Reconstruction-era civil rights law. The law prohibits 2 or more people from conspiring to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States. That would carry a 10-year maximum sentence of imprisonment unless the conspiracy results in death. So already some pretty heavy charges related to, of course, obstruction and the Capitol riot. The indictment also specifies 6 unnamed co-conspirators that are said to include 4 attorneys, a DOJ official, and a political consultant. Gee, I wonder who they could be. I have some ideas. According to a Washington Post article, Smith's team had looked into the conduct of lawyers Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, John Eastman, as well as Kurt Olson and Kenneth Chesebro, as well as then Justice Department lawyer Jeffrey Clark. So it's a good chance that at least some of those people are involved. As for the conspiracy, prosecutors allege that he orchestrated a plot to overturn the 2020 election on and leading up to January 6th. So here's what the indictment reads. So for more than 2 months following Election Day on November 3rd, 2020, the defendant spread lies that there had been outcome determinative fraud in the election and that he had actually won. That, of course, is not true. The indictment reads, these claims were false, and the indictment knew they were false, but the defendant disseminated them anyway to make his knowingly false claims appear legitimate, created an intense atmosphere of mistrust and anger, and erode public faith in the administration of the election. I wonder if this could refer to the election workers that Trump had called out, along with Giuliani, for allegedly doing fraud. Also, maybe could involve the calling of different different officials in several different swing states that Trump claims that he had won, but actually didn't, to try to pressure them. There's the fake elector scheme, on and on. According to the Washington Post, prosecutors also focused on ads and fundraising pitches, claiming election fraud, like the Election Defense Fund, for example, as well as plans for fake electors who could have swung the election to Trump, and determining to what degree Republican operatives, activists, and elected officials, including Trump, understood that their claims of massive voter fraud were false at the time that they were making them. And of course, the indictment reads that they believe that he did and should have proof of that. I think the proof is pretty clear, but again, it has to be convincing to basically the jury. Now, the indictment also alleges that the former president and co-conspirators exploited the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by continuing efforts to convince members of Congress to delay the certification of the election that day. So those are the people who, again, refused in Congress to certify the election results. That's what Trump and cohorts wanted them to do. As violence ensued, the indictment says, in reference to the attack, the defendant and co-conspirators exploited the disruption by redoubling efforts to levy false claims of election fraud and convince members of Congress to further delay the certification based on those claims. That was going to be part of what's known as a Green Bay sweep. And so That's a way to blanket the airwaves with these claims, these false claims of election fraud, in order to try to convince Republican state officials to basically approve the fake electors that would actually keep Trump in power. The indictment also says that Trump deceived rioters to believe then Vice President Mike Pence could change the election results to make Trump the winner. Again, that's not something that the vice president is able to do. But Trump, again, you saw the tweets on January 6th where he was pressuring, Mike, do the right thing, Mike. You got to do the right thing and not certify the election, even though it's we all know it's a ceremonial role that he can't actually, prevent a new president from taking power. That is not something the vice president is able to do. Because that would mean that Kamala Harris would have that power. That would mean that any vice president would have that power, and that's just not the reality. It's not in the Constitution anywhere. Now, there's more. The indictment says, after it became public on the afternoon of January 6th, the vice president would not fraudulently alter the election results. A large and angry crowd, including many individuals whom the defendant had deceived into believing the vice president could and might change the election results, violently attacked the Capitol and halted the proceeding, leading, of course, to chants of hang Mike Pence, threatening to, murder the vice president of the United States. So these are some very serious and very specific charges. Now, of course, Trump's 2024 presidential campaign put out this statement immediately right after news of the indictment came out. Quote, "This is nothing more than the latest corrupt chapter in the continued pathetic attempt by the Biden crime family and their weaponized Department of Justice to interfere with the 2024 presidential election, in which President Trump is the undisputed frontrunner and is leading by substantial margins." First of all, the White House won't even comment on this. So, the Biden crime family trying to interfere in the election. No, they're trying very, very hard not to interfere. Furthermore, the Trump campaign says this: these un-American witch hunts will fail, and President Trump will be reelected into the White House so he can save our country from the abuse, incompetence, and corruption that is running through the veins of our country at levels never seen before. I beg to differ. I think we have seen this before. I think we saw plenty of corruption and abuse and incompetence. You're basically explaining the previous administration. Total projection. Now, look, as I mentioned, these are pretty heavy charges, and it seems like there's a lot of evidence for them. We've talked about that on the show a lot. And look, Smith talked to a lot of people from Trump's orbit behind closed doors and subpoenas, testimony. And look, from that, guys, we know Trump knew that he was perpetuating a lie to try to stay in power. We knew he lost the election. We knew that he knew he lost the election. He also knew that these legal theories that were presented by people like Eastman, of like, oh no, we can get Pence to not certify it. We can do all this stuff. The Steve Bannons of the world that were, telling him that, oh, if you just delay, you can get the fake electors in there. No, he knew that this was not legally sound. But I think, and this is my speculation on this, I think if it had worked, Trump figured, well then, if I get back into power, who's going to stop me? Who's going to come after me if I get into power? Now, thankfully, that did not happen. And so, there might be a bit of accountability here. It might all be catching up to him, which is why I think in his mind, it's more important than ever for him to get reelected. And of course, Republican voters, well, they feel the same way. They're definitely going to nominate him again. I think this right here helps in the nomination more than anything he could ever do. Whether that means that he will get reelected, I mean, we'll have to see on that one. But certainly he wants to get reelected so he can go back to ignoring the law. And now, after all this, probably go on to punish his enemies. Now, who does that? A dictator, a criminal, perhaps even a mob boss. Unfortunately for Trump, if this goes to trial before the election, got to remember Jack Smith, well, mob bosses are Smith's specialty.